have had periods where you disappeared, excuse me, for a little bit, and then something brought you back. And I want you to think about what it was that brought you back in that case, if that's your story. And if you weren't born here, if you got here by some other means, what was it that was going on in you, or in your life, or in your family, or in your world, that precipitated you arriving here at this church? Just think about that for a minute. Because research shows that there are lots of ways that people get to church. But there are two really important ways that people get to church. Two things that usually make somebody walk through that door. One is that there is a significant crisis in their life. A significant life change of some kind. You move from one town to another. Don't have any connection. You look for connection. You get married, and you decide that, or you want to get married, and you decide that you need a community, or you start looking for a pastor who will marry you. And you end up connecting to a church through that. Somebody dies, and the death is so painful, and you have so much trouble trying to figure out how to put that together again that you look for help. You get a divorce. You find yourself alone, trying to navigate the world in ways you haven't had to in a while. And you want some support. The first most important reason that brings people through those doors is a change in their life or a crisis in their life. I want you to think about that. How true is that for you? Number one. What does that mean in terms of who we need to be when somebody walks through that door? What does that mean? The second most important reason that people show up through the doors of a church is, and in some ways it's another form of life change, but they're looking for a place to raise their children up in faith. They have a family, they may not have been a part of the church for a long time. All of a sudden they got these little squinkles running around, and they're trying to figure out, how do I do this? I need a village to help raise these kids. I know a number of us got here that way. And a number of us came back because of that. But what does it mean for us in the life of our community when we know that the second most important reason that people come back to church or come through those doors is because they want help raising their kids, and we don't have anything for them on Sunday morning right now? These are a couple of the issues that we wrestled with as a session yesterday. And in wrestling with those, we believe that these are two huge priorities that we need to address in the year ahead. But it's going to take all of us to do that. The session can't do it by themselves. So, just think for a minute. Which of us would go to the trouble of throwing a huge party and getting everything ready and planning all the food and doing all the decorations and then not inviting anybody to it? Would you do that? I wouldn't do that. I want the people there. Or how about you plan a banquet and you spend days preparing all the food and you work on developing the menu and you get everything set beautifully and you sit down at the table and there's nobody there because we haven't invited anyone. Ridiculous, isn't it, to think of doing those things? It's just absurd. And yet, that's what we do every Sunday morning sometimes. We spend days preparing choir, music, sermons, liturgy, classes, and we don't do anything to ask anybody to come. We just expect that they're going to arrive. Well, they won't. Some will, but many of them won't. But what can happen is that when you're sitting in that office with your coworker and you discover that they just had a serious loss in their family, and they're hurting, and you can see it on their faces. And you come up to them and you listen to that story for a little while, and you find out that they really could use some support. You say, you know what? I know a place that's provided support for me. And I know that they would love to support you too. Here's a little piece of paper. Put it in both deals here today. No, not that one.
Here.
This one. Here's a little piece of paper that tells you a little bit about who we are. Here's my name. Give me a call. I'd love to take you with me sometime. Now, is that too hard? Honestly? Is that too hard to do? Because if we can't do that, we set a banquet every Sunday. We plan a party every Sunday. And the ones who come are the ones who happen to know about it. And I'm glad everybody that's here is here. But I don't think I'm wrong in believing that there's a lot of other people who would benefit from what we have. A lot. In fact, my friend Robert Schnazy, who's a bishop now in Missouri, he was the pastor of First United Methodist Church in McAllen and wrote a book called 5 Habits of Fruitful Congregations. And in the beginning of that book, he says, I think we have forgotten as a church what a treasure we hold and how many people are aching to be a part of that kind of treasure. Just think about these things for a minute. Is it at all valuable to you in your life to have a few close companions from this congregation who have walked with you through thick and thin in your life, in the ups and downs, the joys and the absolute bottoms that you've hit? Is that valuable to you at all? Is that something you treasure and are grateful for? Or how about a place where you get to sit down with people and talk about the questions in your life that are really most important to you? The struggles for understanding and meaning and purpose. And for a sense of connection to something bigger than just your own life. Is that of any value to you? Is that a treasure that you just might ought to share? Or how about just the value of a group of friends that you can go out for margaritas with at Chewy's sometime and just celebrate being alive together? Or how about the opportunity to come to a place where worship connects you in real ways to the Holy One who is sovereign of all? Is that of any value? You know, if we would share a Spurs ticket with a friend, if we would share a new video game with a friend, if we would share any of these other things that come into our lives that we think are great and valuable, why is it so hard for us to share these treasures that we've known? Why? We reflected as a session upon these issues, and it surprised me. I hadn't even worked on my sermon until last night. And I thought, wow, the lectionary gives me, the next day, the passage about Jesus inviting disciples to join him in his banquet. In his baptism, Jesus experienced this incredibly powerful sense of God's love, absolutely, unconditionally poured over his life. That experience sent him into the desert. It was so powerful to figure out what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And he comes out of the desert ready to share what he now calls good news. Good news. You are loved. I am loved. We are loved. God is right here now. Good news. But he doesn't just say it himself. The very first thing that Jesus does is say, come with me. Come with me. And I'm going to teach you how to fish for people and not just fish. Fish for what? Fish for people. I'm going to teach you how to share with people the most important thing in the world. Jesus doesn't just invite them, but he connects them to what he's doing. He involves them in what he's doing. Margie and I were talking just before we came in, and she's like, I'm not an inviter. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Not my deal. I said, it may not be your deal. And I'm not saying every single one of us has got to absolutely do that. But I don't want you to get off the hook too easily. I said, if you can't be an inviter, then be a connector. Because the second most important thing when someone walks through those doors, they need to be loved on. And we do a good job of that. Somebody walks through the doors, and we're like, yeah, who are you? Yeah, good to know you. Oh, I love you. Hug. You know? We get new meat in the sanctuary on Sunday morning when it's Hug Fest time, and, you know, everybody's on them. It's great. I love that. But here's where we fall down. That's not enough. They need to get connected to somebody else, to something else. They need to get engaged in what we are and what we do. It's an invitation to a Lectio group, or an invitation to a midweek Bible study, or an invitation to help make breakfast with you when it's your turn to be part of the breakfast crew, or an invitation to the men's group to hang out, or to the men's retreat, or to the women's retreat, or to come and help on Tuesday mornings doing the service to the community with the food boxes or with the thrift shop. It's a come along with me. Come with me. Let me show you why this place is important to me. If you can't be an inviter, then be a connector. Find the folks who come through the door who are getting hugged on in Mass and Sunday morning and say, hey, this is my name, this is my phone number, can I get a hold of you later on and invite you to come along with me to something? I'd love for you to meet some of my good friends in this church. It's not rocket science, folks. It's really not. But it's fundamental, it's foundational, and it's essential to our ability to be for others what we have been able to be for each other so far. And Jesus didn't just do this with his disciples. It was part of his preaching and teaching. One of the core parables that I love in Jesus' teaching ministry is the parable of the wedding banquet. Very close to my heart just recently. Because, you know, I've thought about that parable the whole time we were getting ready for our wedding. And Beth and I were like, well, how many people? And I was like, well, you know, I can't not invite anybody from my church. She's like, I don't know if I could either. And so we just were like, the joy is so big, let's just invite everyone. And we did. Not everybody could come. And that was true of Jesus' teaching too. A king threw a wedding feast, and he sent people out from far and wide to come and be a part of the feast. He went to invite them, to bring them in, to let them know they were welcome. And many of them said, oh, sorry, I'm not going to go to your wedding feast. I don't like it anyway. And the word came back that nobody could come. So what did he do? He didn't say, oh, no feast. No, he said, I'll invite whoever will come now. Inviting is at the core of Jesus' way in the world, is at the core of his teaching, at the core of his practice. And if we are followers of that Jesus, it ought to be part of ours as well. It's just that simple. So be prepared this year. We're going to work hard at becoming an inviting and engaging congregation. that reaches out, brings people in, connects them to one another. Because that is what our treasure is. That's our treasure. That is the precious pearl of great price that we hold in our hands. That is the life-giving grace that we carry in our community. And people are desperate for it. Take one of these, and over the course of this next month, just keep it close. Keep it close. And listen to the people around you. Listen for the ones who are in crisis, or in a transition, or looking for a pastor to marry them, or looking for a place to have their wedding. We're looking for a place to find some love when they feel very unloved, or some hope when they feel very hopeless. And when you hear those words come out of a friend's mouth, put your name on this, put your phone number on this, and say, hey, you may not want to right now, but I would love to bring you along to the place where I found what you need. No pressure, just a lot of love. And leave it with them. I'm hopeful that we can at least do that. Would you join me in prayer? God, there are aching lives all around us. Aching lives all around us. That need to know they are loved, that need to know that whatever wrongs they have committed are not so big that their life is worthless. Aching lives who have been broken and do not know that it's possible to get fixed or made whole again. Aching lives that long for something bigger than what they're living right now. And we hold that treasure in our hands and in our hearts. Make us bold, I pray, to share what we've been given. In your name I pray.